I recently turned 25, but nobody is talking about it. I noticed it wasn't just me, and I realized there was a need for a show like this. Why can't I buy a house? Why can't I do all these things that my parents or my grandparents did? Also, there are extreme levels of anxiety, depression. It's so hard to take the good and leave the bad when it comes to this topic. It's so easy to feel like you are alone in that problem. This generation, I think, is subject to a lot of scrutiny. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, my name is Alivia, and today we're going to be talking about the tumultuous 20s. Why struggling in your 20s is normal, why it's okay if you're feeling like you're having a hard time finding your purpose, if you don't know what the right career decisions are, maybe you're having a hard time making friends in a city that you've known all your life, or you're having a hard time making friends because you moved halfway across the country, and making friends as an adult is so hard. These are ideas that we're going to be tackling not only in today's episode. This video is made for people who are struggling in their 20s, but also in the future of this podcast. So we're going to be bringing on other people in their 20s, other people who have aged far beyond their 20s who have valuable advice to give to us on how to handle all these very difficult things, and also all these challenges that are in some ways novel when it comes to the 21st century. 20-year-olds are facing issues today that we've never seen 20-year-olds facing in the past. And I think that's really difficult when there's not a precedent set for how to manage all of these different things. And so if you found this video because you are, again, in your mid-20s like I am, and you don't really know what to do, or you're feeling a little bit lost, comment down below and let me know what kinds of topics you want talked about on here, and also what kinds of guests you would love to hear from and who you think you could gain valuable knowledge and wisdom from, because I am dying to hear it. So without further ado, let's just jump into, the episode. As always, I want to tackle this topic in a few different sections, a few different chapters, I think is how YouTube does it. And the first thing is I want to give you the big why I felt like this topic was important, why I myself might be someone that you can rely on or provide wisdom. And that's not exactly what I'm going to be doing, but we're going to get into what exactly I mean by why you would look to me and look to this podcast for valuable information on navigating your 20s, because I, just like you, do not know fully what I am doing. But the whole reason that this came about, again, the big why, that's what I want to talk about first, is I recently turned 25. Now, 25 is a big number. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. It could just be me. I feel like it's not just me. And every time I reached like a significant age up to this point in my life, I feel like I would always be like, oh my gosh, this is such a big deal. Like, I'm turning 18, I can vote. Or I'm turning 21, oh my gosh, I can drink, I can party. Or I'm turning, honestly, those are the big ones. But even when I was turning, I remember when I turned 23, I was like, oh my gosh, I am out of the early 20s. Like, I'm not really a college, technically, like more stereotypically aged college student. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 23, I'm fully on my own, I pay all my own bills. And that was a huge deal. But then something changed when I turned 25. Not necessarily in the way that I think a lot of people think of it, like in terms of aging. Not like I turned 25 and I was like, oh my gosh, a quarter of my life is over. Like if you live a long, healthy life, which I haven't thought about that until right now. So that's great. But more so in terms of I turned 25 and I was, oh my goodness, there is a giant blue jay right outside my window. And I think it's eating a lizard. One second. So sorry, I got a little distracted. I'm a big nature fan, and there were lizards climbing on my window and birds, blue jays specifically, flying around outside. I think he was going for the lizard. I don't know if they eat those, but that's what it looked like. So sorry. But what I was saying is that when I turned 25, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so old. It was like all of a sudden I was looking inward at myself and being like, what have I accomplished? at 25, like you're a quarter of the way through your life, again, hopefully. And what have I done, And I found that I was falling victim to comparing myself twice as much or more as I had been doing in the past. I again felt like there was nothing to do but not criticize myself, but like evaluate myself. That's a better way to say it. And I started noticing that so many people in my own personal life, so many of my friends who are also around this age in life, were going through the same thing. I would, run into a friend and they're like, oh my gosh, I've had a really rough week because I saw this thing on social media and I'm all of a sudden questioning why I'm not as successful as that person. Or I have other friends where they really hate their corporate jobs and they're like, what do I do? Corporate America pays so much better, but it is soulless. So do I want to work so hard so I can get paid so much better? Or do I want to do a less corporate lifestyle, something where I might enjoy my day-to-day so much more, but I can't afford to do the things that I want to do? And it's this impossible question. And I think all of us in our 20s are really grappling with these different things. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Like, I'm looking inwards at myself. I'm evaluating. I'm trying to figure out what I've done right, what I've done wrong. But every single other person, maybe there's someone who is not feeling this way in their mid-20s, and to them, kudos. But most of the people in my life that I've talked to about this, either loosely or exactly on the nose, saying, hey, I'm having this problem. I don't know if you are too. It seems like it's everywhere. And so that's why I feel like there's going to be so much value in doing a show like this, where we bring on different people in their 20s who can talk to us about very real things that they're experiencing, how they've gotten through it, how they've navigated, or if they haven't gotten through it, what they're doing to get through it. And again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is not limited to 20s. I feel like maybe the most valuable people of all are those who have gotten through their 20s, who can look back on their life and say, these are all the things that I think I did right, but these are all the things that maybe I've done wrong and could have done differently. This is what I recommend you to do, how to succeed. And so, yes, all of that is to say, the big why, I was having a bit of a hard time. I was having a bit of a crisis because I didn't know what path I want, two things, what path I'm currently on and what path I wanted to be on. This is in every single area of life, where I live, friends, professional, family, like it goes on. And I noticed it wasn't just me, and I realized there was a need for a show like this. It's funny too, I think 25 snuck up on me as it sneaks up on most people. I think all ages maybe sneak up on most people. And so my sister is a couple years younger than me. She's turning 23 this year. And I just, I'm constantly cracking jokes to her saying, like, you're not turning 23 because I'm 23, or like, you're not turning 23 because I'm 18, like, I'm like that, like, how is that possible? I remember having a friend whose older brother was 23 and I was like, oh my God, he's so old. Not like old, but you get what I'm saying, like in such a different stage of life than me. And now here I am, 25, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm older than the person who I thought was so much older and so much greater and so much cooler than I was. And it's just been an interesting thing for me to grapple. And so the next thing that I kind of want to transition to is these topics that I was starting to talk to my friends about. It's not just one or two things that I think people are struggling with in their 20s, and I think that goes for everything. But there are so many different topics that we can tackle that a lot of people at this stage of life are going through, which is why, again, this show feels really endless. I think, dating in your 20s is so hard. Dating in your 20s in the age of social media and like keeping ourselves locked up inside. I think it's harder in some ways easier than it's ever been, but in other ways harder than it's ever been to go out and like meet somebody new just out in public and be like, hey, like, do you want to go on a date? So like dating in your 20s is so, so hard because I think we've lost some of these skills when it comes to meeting people out in the wild. So that's one thing that's really, really hard. But also another thing that I think is so challenging in your 20s is talking about your career, right? I think with almost, I would say probably 90% of the people in my own life who, again, are between the ages of like 22 and 30, do not feel a lot of confidence that they are in the job that they want to be in for a long time. Some of these people are having a hard time finding jobs, and that is so normal right now. They've either lost their jobs and can't get another one, or they're just having a hard time finding a job out of college. The year that I graduated, I feel like a lot of people got jobs out of college, but the year after, my friends who were the year below me in school, I remember them having an extremely difficult time just with the way that the economy was and the way that things were. And that was really, really normal. And I do also think that, you're not supposed to know this early on in life what you want to do professionally. There's so much time to experiment and figure out what you want to do, try out doing one job, and if you don't love that, try out another one. If you don't love that, try out another one. But I do think it's really easy to get stuck. It's really easy to become complacent with where you're at, and I don't think we should be normalizing that. And so all of that is to say, a lot of the people that I know have so much inner turmoil when it comes to their career. A lot of them very corporate, and it's soul sucking, but they love the pay, and that's super, super difficult for them. But there's also another group of people who are working less corporate jobs who, really prefer, like they enjoy the hours from 9 to 5, but again, they can't afford to do all of these things that maybe they want to do, which leads me into the next thing that I want to tackle on this channel, which is finances and budgeting and, planning out all of these big decisions that we have to make with our money in your 20s. Something that I have become very aware of in the last few years is the way that you manage your money in your 20s has the biggest impact on your life down the road. Your money is worth the most it's ever going to be worth the younger that you are, because, well, we don't have to get into it. I'm a big fan of like certain financial things and investing and all of that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of pressure on us to put as much as we can into our retirement accounts and into our savings accounts, but nobody is talking about it. My friends, the way they spend gives me anxiety. And I'm so sorry if that's like judgmental, and it's not intended that way. It's just no one's talking about these things. No one's teaching us these things. And that's really, really important. And so it becomes our responsibility to figure that out ourselves. And so that's really tough. And it's also very closely related to buying a home. I feel like if you're in your 20s, you probably get this. Buying a home feels impossible. Like, I am from California, and growing up in a place where a little shack is nothing short of $1 million, how am I in my 20s starting from literally nothing, starting from student debt? So I'm in the negatives at this point, okay, when I graduated college. How am I supposed to get that house, And that's not the case for all of America. It is definitely less expensive in other places. For example, where I currently am, Texas, it's less expensive. But it is still so hard. And I don't feel it's so easy to blame ourselves, right? Why can't I buy a house? Why can't I do all these things that my parents or my grandparents did? It is so hard. And I want to talk about A, normal to feel that way, not our fault, but B, what kinds of things we should be doing to give ourselves our best chance. And again, I'm not the expert, okay? I am the person trying to get that information and deliver it to you, to hand deliver that information. And so again, I want to have people on who can give us that valuable, juicy information. Now, if someone bought a house in their 20s, how'd they do it? Where'd they go? How did they invest their money? What kinds of jobs are they doing to be able to afford themselves that situation and all of that kind of thing? But there are so many other topics in addition to these. I mean, we've only covered a few: real estate, finances, which is entirely boring for some people, but also so important. And I think we should normalize talking about these things. What else have I talked about? I already forgot. Dating, just, all these things that are so difficult in your 20s, but there's so much more. There's moving in your 20s is a bitch. Like I did it, and it is so hard to start over from zero, and zero friends. That is what I am referring to. It's really tough. Moving in your 20s is hard. Having kids in your 20s is hard for many, many different reasons. Just the cost of having kids, the emotional impact that has on you, all of these things. Also, there are extreme levels of anxiety, depression, and that is so hard and so normal. And there's also social media. Like, we are getting stuck in the scroll like never before. And I'm 100% victim to this. I have timers set on my social media apps. Do I ignore them? Yeah, sometimes I do. And I'm not afraid to say that. Sometimes I do listen. I can't say that I ignore them every single time, but sometimes I do ignore them. My Instagram timer, 15 minutes, sometimes that doesn't feel like enough. And I know that there are so many people who get stuck on their phones, get stuck on their computers, get stuck on YouTube, get stuck on TikTok, get stuck on, I don't know, Instagram, all of these different social media platforms. And I think there's a way that those social media platforms can be done well, and there's a healthy way to have them in your life. For example, I think podcasts can be very valuable. I think it's really nice to hear different perspectives on things, to learn things. I think it can be very, very valuable to have comforting YouTubers that you love. I am a huge fan of YouTube. I have so many YouTubers that do vlogs, and they make book content, and they have podcasts, and they're just my comfort people. Like, I feel the most at peace when I'm watching these creators. And I think there's a really, really beautiful side to social media, but there is also an ugly, dangerous, comparative side to social media that is almost impossible to escape. It's so hard to take the good and leave the bad when it comes to this topic. And so that's probably another thing that I would love to talk about on this show, is how do we, as young people who have grown up in the age of technology, navigate these two things? I do not know. Because I'm not willing to give up YouTube and Instagram and podcasts and Spotify. Like, I'm not willing to do that. But at the same time, sometimes it really negatively impacts me, and I don't know how to cut that out. And that is unfortunately really challenging, and it's a challenge that a lot of people are going through right now. And so there's all of these big questions that are floating around, right? I feel like I haven't even touched on a fraction of them. Kids, anxiety, dating, buying a house, finances, literally a million. Social media, again, let me know in the comments what I have forgotten, because I'm sure there are so many. But if there are so many of these issues and so many of these challenges that not only I'm facing, but that the people in my life are facing, and YouTubers that I watch, they openly talk about it and they're struggling with all these things, I came to the conclusion that there must be some kind of universal here. Not completely, but to some extent, so many of us are not victim, I really do not like using that word. Subject, so much better. So many of us are subject to the same pressures, economic circumstances, and I don't mean like personal situations. I more so mean like the general global situation, right? Obviously, every single person has different challenges that they're facing. But economically and on social media and societal pressures and all of these kinds of things, family expectations, so many of us are going through so many similar things that it pushes us towards having similar problems and related problems. And I think part of the issue that I have noticed, at least, is it's so easy to feel like you are alone in that problem. So when I go through things, or I'm having a bad mental day or whatever, and I'm being really hard on myself, or something really bad happened, I literally cannot fathom the idea that this has happened to other people. Like, I feel like I must be the first person to go through this, which is so unfounded. Like, it's just so beyond not the truth. But it feels like it in that moment, when you're being so down on yourself and you're having such a hard day and this really bad situation happened. And it tends to be really specific to the person, right? I've been through things that I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, no way this has happened to anybody else but me. But then I take a step back now when I'm feeling okay, having a good day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this happens to people all of the time, right? If you look in the mirror today and you're feeling like you're having a not so good day, it's easy to feel like it's just you, but it's not. People think this all the time. And that is one measly example compared to all of the things that so many people are going through all the time. And so if there's a way to vocalize or share or get out these problems, that to me is part of the solution. If people can feel less alone in what they're going through, this includes me, okay? I have all sorts of things that I struggle with and need to get through on the day-to-day, just as everyone else does. If we can talk about it in a way that makes people feel less alone and like they're not the only one, then I think we are doing so much to help. One thing that I will say that I struggle with a little bit is I definitely have some health anxiety. I'm a bit, and by a bit, I do mean quite a lot, of a hypochondriac. And so I all the time am cooking up things in my head that could be wrong with me. If someone gets sick, I'm like, surely I'm sick. Like it's constantly cooking in my brain. Okay. And I found a creator who has been, to some extent, pretty open about her health anxiety. And it was the first time I didn't even have a word for what I was experiencing in my own mind. It was the first time that I had heard someone who is my age talk about something that they go through that's hard on them that I would never, ever know unless they told me themselves. That made me feel literally so much better. Like, I experienced some kind of inner peace watching her talk about this because I felt so much validation. Another example is I struggle with flying. I am really not the best about it. And I get a lot of anxiety in that situation. And I have another completely separate creator who has opened up about how it's difficult for her to do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Because when you're sitting on that plane and everyone's in their little seats, I'm like, they're all just chilling, except for me. Like, I'm the only one that's freaking out. But that's not true. We literally have no idea the battles that people are facing. And these are just two small examples. The reason I bring them up again is I don't want this show to be about me. That's never been my thing. I've never really enjoyed to make content like that. I've always, especially on this channel, I've always focused on the educational side of things. How can I share a valuable and academic message? And so the goal isn't to talk about myself, but I do feel like in certain instances, it's valuable to understand what angles I'm taking. And so when I have, struggled with my own things and I've heard people talk about them online, it's literally, even though there's no solution being presented, just hearing that it's not you makes me feel so good. And there's so many issues that I do not have, that I have not experienced, that so many other people do go through all the time. And that's the kind of thing that I want to use this platform to share, is to show, like, when I'm interviewing a subject, be like, hey, like, tell me, lots of good stuff too. Like, tell me about yourself, your career, your passions. What do you struggle with? What kind of thing do you want the people who are watching this, who might go through the same kinds of challenges that you do, what do you want them to take away from this? How do you want to make them feel seen? What kinds of things can they implement in their day-to-day lives? And that kind of thing to me is so valuable. And that is something I'm really hoping to share. And so if that sounds like the kind of messaging that you want, definitely shameless promo, subscribe, follow the podcast. This is going to be, right now we're just on YouTube, but I am going to be working on distributing this to different streaming services. So you guys can listen to this on your morning walk, your morning run, your evening activities, or whatever it is that you guys like to do. So yeah, definitely shameless promo, but definitely follow and subscribe. One of the final things that I did want to address that I've touched on lightly so far, but not in as much depth as I think is important, is this generation, I think, is subject to a lot of scrutiny. My own generation, but also like kids and teenagers that are younger than myself. Like I said, I'm freshly 25. And, I think that's really tough because, again, these people who are placing judgment on people like myself don't know what it's like to grow up in this generation. And so we have, one side of the spectrum per se that says all of these, like the future of our world is ruined, like our country is in shambles, all these kinds of things, like what are we going to do with them? And then you have other people. I feel like the big one that's super popular right now, I've barely watched any of her content, a little bit. I need to listen to her more. I've heard nothing but great things. Is someone like Mel Robbins, who's really big right now. She, I feel like, gives my people so much validation because she's like, look at all these things that these 20-year-olds are going through. Like, imagine how tough that would be to be 20 right now. And it's people like her and, psychologists and therapists and just people of that mindset that I'm really appreciative of, because I think there needs to be a certain amount of validation that's given to us, a certain amount of understanding and grace that's like, wow, it would be really tough to be 20, to be 25 in 2025. That's a challenge that no one has really experienced before except for the people who are living it right now. But I do think, and this is where it gets difficult, is this can go too far. It can go too far to one side where we're giving ourselves too much kindness, too much grace, to the point where we're saying that we, and this is a time I do want to use this word, that we are the victim, right? Like how sad, feels so bad for us that we have to grow up in these times, or that the economy's never been like this, so we can't buy a home, or we can't get a pension anymore, or we can't do this, So you're like, oh, wow, like, I just want to feel bad for myself and do nothing about it because I'm giving myself so much kindness and so much grace and it's not my fault. So there's nothing that needs to be done. That's where I feel like it gets, the waters get kind of murky, right? There is so much, like, we need to be kind to ourselves, but we also need to be able to switch gears, to learn how to change, to take our lives into our own hands, right? Like, to be like, okay, like, yes, these are the circumstances that I'm living in, but what am I going to do about it? How am I going to make the world work for me to a certain extent, obviously? And so that kind of gray, not the background, sorry for anyone listening, my little background just went out. I think I was saying that that's where, we start to have this gray area. How nice do we need to be to ourselves? And also, when do we need to snap out of it and become action oriented and make things work for us? I do not have the answer to that. And I think that's the whole question, isn't it? And I don't think I'll ever fully figure it out. I think there's too much to disentangle that to some extent it is impossible. But for anyone that's been a part of this channel and part of this community for a long time, I am an anthropologist at heart. This whole channel, this whole show started because I have a love of understanding humanity. I love understanding why we think, why we are the way that we are, how over millions of years, over evolutionary history, why our minds have, turned out this way in the 21st century, and also like more modern and cultural and social pressures, how that impacts us and the way that we present ourselves in the world, how we think about ourselves. That kind of stuff just has always fascinated me. But what's fascinated me the most is not just learning this information, that's one huge part of it, but also applying it and figuring out, given all this information that we've learned, how can we transform our lives? How can I improve my mental health? How can I make someone's day or someone's life just so much better? I think learning something is one thing, but applying it is another huge thing. And in anthropology, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the field, it's all about, again, studying humans. There's a field of anthropology called applied anthropology. And again, it's all about transforming knowledge into action. And so I want to be able to do that on this channel. I think it kind of reminds me, maybe the anthropology approach isn't the best. Another way to think about it is, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but like reading self-help books. I like a good self-help book every now and then. They're not my favorite, but I do appreciate them. It would be like reading a bunch of self-help books and then never actually using any of the information in your own life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if we're reading all of these great tips and then we are like, wow, that's really great that information is there and it exists and it's in the world. And then we like close the book and never think about it ever again. Not the goal, not the vibe. I want to be action oriented around here. And I really want my viewers to receive these videos and think about it, not only what can you learn, that's huge. I love that part of everything. Obviously, I love education and learning, but also how can we, take this information and put it into our own lives if it is relevant to us. And so that is why I want to officially introduce this podcast, which for now, I'm not committing to anything. Right now, we're talking about the QuarterLife crisis situation, and that's the vibe. But for now, for the time being, I want to officially introduce the QuarterLife crisis podcast. And that is that. I would not say that I'm actually having a QuarterLife crisis. However, I've reached that QuarterLife point. And I can acknowledge that so many people at this age are experiencing their QuarterLife crisis. And I want to do everything I can to help people who are struggling with that. And so, yes, definitely, if you haven't already, click subscribe, share this video with people that you know in their 20s. And also, if you are the kind of person where you think you have a valuable message to share, comment down below, send me an email, because we are going to be interviewing all kinds of amazing special guests on this show. Some of them are going to be from my own personal life. They might be my friends. They might be my family. I also am really hoping to have different creators come onto this show. So if you guys have a favorite YouTuber or a favorite, honestly, anyone who kind of meets the demographic that I'm going for, and by demographic, I kind of mean everyone, because you can give advice when you're older than your 20s. Let me know, tag them, whatever. Do what you guys got to do, because we are going to get this show up and running like you have never seen before. And I am so excited. I also want to have professionals come onto the show, whether that be anthropologists or psychologists or therapists or influential speakers, people who've written these self-help books. I don't know, y'all. I have no freaking idea. But I really want to create something great that makes people feel seen, that makes them feel cared about, and actually improves your quality of life. And that's my big dream and my big goal. So like I said, if you guys haven't already, definitely subscribe, follow the podcast. Another shameless plug, I also, while we're at it, have a book channel where I talk all about books, and that's literally it. I read books and review them, and it is so much fun. So I think that's going to be it. If you guys want valuable wisdom in your 20s, follow, subscribe. I've said it 100 times, but I think that's all. Welcome to QuarterLife Crisis, where things maybe start chaotic but end less chaotic. That's what I'm going to leave you with, you guys. I hope you're having a great day. I'll see you either next week or the week after. Right now we're on a bi-weekly upload, but soon we're going to be switching over to weekly uploads. So I will see you guys sometime soon in the next week or so. Bye.